everybody, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are finally going to talk about the 4th of July Massacre, also known as the Highland Park Shooting. Now I am going to talk about it in a different way than I had planned originally. Instead of focusing so much on describing exactly the events that occurred, we're going to do a quick synopsis of the events because it has been covered so highly in the news, especially directly after July 4th. And then we are going to actually speak about how this man was able to get a hold of guns and a little bit about the 7 victims and their family members who now are missing somebody that they cared about dearly. So before we get started, if you have not done so already, please hit that red subscribe button down below and make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future videos. I do not know if there'll be a video next week. If there is, it'll probably be a reaction funny crime video so that I can get something to you. But other than that, I don't think I have like a specific video that I'm going to release next week. So to get into the quick synopsis of what happened on the 4th of July in Highland Park, which is in Chicago, Illinois, a 21-year-old named Robert Crimo III decided that he was going to basically spew bullets off of the top of a building at innocent people that were at a parade. Just like any other parade, you know, you have Halloween parades, you have everything else. This was a 4th of July parade, and there was actually a couple different shootings this year at 4th of July parades, but this was the most deadly. And he was shooting from a rooftop and he managed to kill 7 people. Originally, when the news articles came out, they only said 6, but there was a 7th victim. So at 10:14 that day on the 4th of July is when Crimo would start firing, and wasn't immediately noticed until somebody heard noises, and a lot of people originally thought it was fireworks until a witness actually looked upwards towards a building and they saw muzzle flashes and figured out that the shooting was coming from a rooftop. There is some videos of people running from the scene. Once people realized it was gunshots, people began to panic. You can find these videos probably in the links I have down below. Once he was noticed, he decided he was going to start running, and he ran with a bag slung over his shoulder, and he would end up dropping something from that bag. And it would drop into an alleyway, and when the police would find it, they would find out that it was his Smith & Wesson M&P 15, and there was 3 magazines and 83 spent shell casings wrapped in this cloth. And this is actually a gun that Crimo had purchased legally in 2020, despite having, I'd say, many red flags when it comes to run-ins with the police, arguments with his family, just things that should have kept him from being allowed to buy this gun that he'd eventually kill 7 people with and injure dozens more. Police believed that Crimo used a ladder that was attached to the building in order to get up to the rooftop. And they also believe, after seeing certain pictures from camera footage, that he may have dressed as a woman to get away from the crime scene. Now, it wouldn't be too long. They would find him 8 hours later, and that is when they would arrest him with no incident. He surrendered himself, and he would actually admit to what he did. He was found on US 41 at Westlake Road in Lake Forest, and he was spotted when a police officer had seen a vehicle which they believed had somebody in it that looked like a suspect. There was a very short chase, but once they got him to pull over, he just surrendered himself. Once the police had Crimo in custody, it was pretty easy going for them because he confessed to his crimes and basically admitted what he did, so there wasn't anything really for them to question. He was charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder, understandably so for what he did. It was planned out. What I want to talk about the most, though, is how he was able to purchase guns legally. Like I said, if you want to, you can check my links down below and you can go into more information about how the actual shooting went down, because like there's There's statements from witnesses on, you know, how fast, how many gunshots they heard, what all happened. But what I want to get into is how this guy was able to buy these guns because of his previous history, especially with his family. I mean, it's unbelievable. So let's get into it, and then we'll take a couple minutes to talk about the 7 victims of this crime. Okay, so now we're going to get into the part that is probably the most disturbing to me, because this 21-year-old at the time when he passed his 4th background check in order to get his gun, his Smith & Wesson semi-automatic that he ended up murdering these people with at this parade, he had already had, I think it was 2 events in 2019 that involved police officers because of his behavior. So the first event was in April 2019, and this is when Robert Crimo III had a suicide attempt. So that was reported, and obviously a suicide attempt doesn't always mean you're going to go shoot up an entire parade of people, but it does give some information about your state of mind at the time. Now, that was 3 to 4 years before the shooting happened, but then the next incident that they had should have been the super red flag, which should have automatically said, hey, he can't purchase weapons. So then in September of 2019, a family member had actually called the Highland Police Department because Crimo had threatened to kill everybody and said that he had a collection of knives. But when the police came, and they did confiscate 16 knives, a dagger, and a sword, his family members would not do a written complaint. And when they did not do this written complaint, the police were not able to arrest Crimo. And then later on, his dad would also say that they were his knives that he had in his son's bedroom for safekeeping, which that would be a weird place to keep your knife collection, in my opinion, but that's what was said. So when the Highland Park Police Department went to this call in September where he had threatened to kill everybody and he had all of these knives, they actually filled out a clear and present danger report, and they gave it to the Illinois State Police. And the Illinois State Police, they really didn't do anything with it. And so when Crimo would apply for his FOID card in January 2020 and was accepted by the Illinois State Police because his father had also endorsed his request, there was nothing that really brought up a flag. And when people had asked Highland Park Police Department or the Illinois State Police why he would be able to get a gun after an incident like this, what they said was, even with the clear and present danger report, since none of his family members at the time of these events was willing to fill out an actual witness statement or anything in regards to what he had done or his threats, that they couldn't really do anything about it. And what's even scarier is he actually went through 4 different background checks in order to get the Smith & Wesson semi-automatic rifle that he would end up killing all of these people with. And it's scary to think that after 4 background checks, there was nothing that raised his flag for mental health. Even a clear and present danger report, which was filled out, I guess they said that there was no other things that would make them think that he would be that big of a danger. I mean, people make threats all the time and a lot of people don't follow through with them, but he was an incredibly disturbed young man, clearly. I believe he planned it, and when the police had actually arrested him, he had spoke about if he would have had time, where he was going to head is go to another event on the 4th of July and also do another shooting there. So thank goodness he was captured 8 hours later before he had a chance to do something like that. But it's scary because there's always that thin line, especially with our Second Amendment, on whether we should have strict gun control, if we should have no guns at all. People are very clear about their opinions on that. I kind of fall a little bit in the middle. Is it all based on mental health? Should we focus more on mental health when people are purchasing firearms, and then maybe that'll stop the problem? I mean, the United States has the most citizen-owned guns in the world, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing if people use them in the right way, because the whole purpose of the Second Amendment was for, if your government were ever to go against the people, that the people would have the same weapons in order to be able to revolt against a corrupt government. But it's not working when there's people who are doing these mass shootings. I mean, every month. Not long before that, we had the shooting in, I think it was Texas. I think it was the shooting in Texas. And we also had the grocery store shooting. And it's sickening that people can even think about doing things like this. It really was a tragic event. And I felt like I needed to talk about this one for the reason that there has been so many shootings recently. And we've got to come to some kind of solution, because people can't just keep dying like this for nothing. I mean, we don't want people dying in general, but I mean, these people are innocent people. Children could have been shot and killed, just like the school shooting recently. A lot of these people who are doing these shootings are disturbed younger individuals. They're not like the man who did the Vegas shooting, who was, I think he was in his like 50s. These are young kids that probably had signs of having mental illness for a long time, including Crimo, who had 2 incidents that involved the police, and that still didn't stop him from purchasing firearms, even though he was obsessed with something like collecting knives. Even Crimo's own father said that he should get a heavy punishment for this. I mean, he killed 7 people. And his family, while they got a defense attorney, they still are cooperating completely with the police. Okay, so now I'm going to read you a quote that was from the governor in Illinois, and his name is Governor J.B. Pritzker, and what he said at the time. Now, I am going to be reading it because it is like a paragraph long, and I'm not going to try and remember it to tell you guys. I want to have it accurate. So, quote, "If you are angry today, I'm here to tell you to be angry. I'm furious that yet more innocent lives were taken by gun violence. I'm furious that their loved ones are forever broken by what took place today. I'm furious that children and their families have been traumatized. I'm furious that this is happening in communities all across Illinois and America. While we celebrate the 4th of July just once this year, mass shootings have become our weekly, yes, weekly American tradition." And that, I mean, his quote just gives me chills, because they are happening weekly, monthly. I mean, it's terrible, and it needs to stop. So last, I want to talk about the most important people in this crime, and that was the 7 innocent victims of Robert Crimo III after his gun violence. This is another thing I'm going to be reading parts from, because a lot of them are quotes from family members and everything else. I just think it's very important to focus on the victims. I do usually give background on the killer in my videos, but I'm not going to do that here. We have so much information on the innocent victims of these crimes. I just think it's very important to talk about them. Like I said, 7 people were murdered during this crime. And actually, Chicago, in their downtown suburb, they erected a memorial for these 7 people with their pictures, and people would come and they'd visit it, and they were surrounded by flowers. And it says community members even built an ever-growing list of resources and ways to help as they take steps to cope with this tragedy. The first person we are going to talk about is 64-year-old Catherine Goldstein. Catherine Goldstein, also known as Katie, was at the parade with her daughter Casey Goldstein, who told NBC News, which is where I'm getting this information about her, that she at first thought the gunfire was fireworks, which a lot of people did. And then she looked up and she saw the shooter firing down at children. Cassie Goldstein said, quote, "And I told her that it was a shooter and that she had to run. They both ran next to each other, but her mother was shot in the chest and fell," Cassie Goldstein said. Cassie said, "I knew she was dead. I just told her that I loved her, but I couldn't stop because he was still shooting everyone next to me. So I just kept running and I hid behind a trash can." End quote. When the shooting stopped, she then went back to her mother. Catherine Goldstein had actually been mourning her mother's recent death, and she wanted to have some fun, so that's when her and her daughter decided that they were going to the holiday parade. The day before, they went to the botanical gardens. They got got Dairy Queen, and they went to a movie. On the day of the parade, her daughter said, quote, "My mom was waving to the floats as they walked by. She was having a good time. And I got to have 22 years with the best mom in the world. I did everything with her. She was my best friend." Catherine Goldstein's husband, Craig, told NBC, "I can't believe how many best friends Katie has. Katie was the kindest, gentlest person you'd ever meet. She was really selfless and seemingly always upbeat. She touched so many people in a positive way." End quote. The next two people we are going to talk about together, because they were actually husband and wife, and unfortunately they left behind a very young son when these events unfolded, and now he is left without a mother and a father. So these two are 37-year-old Kevin McCarthy and 35-year-old Irina McCarthy of Highland Park. Kevin McCarthy died protecting his 2-year-old son, Aiden, according to McCarthy's father-in-law, Michael Levberg. Quote, "He had Aiden under his body when he was shot," Levberg, Irina McCarthy's father, told the Chicago Sun-Times. So the child was found alive and alone on the parade route, and he's now safely with relatives, but he no longer has parents, and he asked, quote, "Are mommy and daddy coming soon?" Levberg said he doesn't understand. Kevin McCarthy was remembered as a star employee with an incredible work ethic, said Joe Nolan, the chief executive officer at Jaguar Gene Therapy, where McCarthy worked. Quote, "Outside of work, he was a very proud dad and devoted husband who adored his family. We will miss him tremendously." Irina McCarthy was described by her friend Angela Vella as fun, personable, and somewhat of a tomboy who liked to dress up. They were both graduates of DePaul University in Chicago. According to DePaul spokesperson, she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in finance in 2009. Her husband earned the same degree 2 years later. Levberg said, quote, "They were both crazy about their child. They were planning to," end quote. The fourth victim was 88-year-old Stephen Strauss of Highland Park. He was a financial advisor who commuted to his office in downtown Chicago 5 days a week, his relatives told the Chicago Tribune. Even though he was 88 years old, he was known as the family patriarch, and he was, quote, "curious about the world," said his son Peter. He liked to paint as a hobby and visit the Chicago Symphony Orchestra and the Art Institute of Chicago. He left behind his wife Linda, his children Jonathan and Peter, and 4 grandchildren. Fifth, 63-year-old Jacqueline Sondheim of Highland Park. Also known as Jackie, she was a former preschool teacher and a member of North Shore Congregation Israel. According to NBC, Jackie was praised for her tireless dedication in a statement from the synagogue. Quote, "Jackie's work, kindness, and warmth touched us all. From her early days teaching at the Gates of Learning preschool to guiding innumerable among us through life's moments of joy and sorrow as our events and bar mitzvah coordinator, all of this was tireless dedication," end quote. And this was the statement from her synagogue. Her friend Sherry Goodman told NBC that Sondheim had helped to plan the bar mitzvahs for Goodman's 3 daughters. Goodman said, quote, "Always with a smile, a hug, and a band-aid." Sixth, I apologize if I pronounce his name wrong, 88-year-old Nicholas Toledo Zaragoza of Highland Park and Morelos, Mexico. They have 2 contradicting ages on here. They have 78 and 88. Nicholas Toledo Zaragoza attended Highland Park's 4th of July parade only because his family did not want to leave him home alone. He used a walker and he was worried about the crowds. His granddaughter said Toledo described him as a loving man, creative, adventurous, and funny. She remembers looking over at her grandfather, who was sitting amongst his family as a band passed them. Quote, "He was so happy," she said, "happy to be living in the moment," end quote. They didn't realize someone opened fire on the crowd until bullets started coming towards them. 3 struck their grandfather, killing him on the spot. Toledo Zaragoza came to Illinois from Mexico to visit his family about 2 months ago, but stayed because of his injuries he had received when he was hit by a car a couple of years ago during an earlier stay in Highland Park. The family wanted him to stay permanently. Her grandfather had a big smile and bright blue eyes that stood out. He had 8 grandchildren, most in the United States, and others in Mexico. He preferred a home-cooked meal to eating out, and he enjoyed fishing and liked to take walks around Highland Park. He never wanted to be inside, he always wanted to be outside. his granddaughter said. Last, 69-year-old Eduardo Uvaldo of Waukegan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Eduardo Uvaldo was taken to Evanston Hospital after the shooting on Monday, but later was declared dead. That is why if you saw that originally it said only 6 people were killed during the shooting, that's why, because he was not declared dead on the scene. He attended the parade with his wife and other family members ahead of his 70th birthday on Friday, which would have been July 8th, the time this happened. His wife and grandson were also wounded, but have been released from the hospital. His daughter, Susanna, said he was a kind and loving man. So that is all the information on the victims. If you would like to read that, of course, like I said already, that will be in my links down below. This is a topic I want to continue talking about. I think it's important. I mean, these shootings, they have to stop. Like I said a million times already in this video, there's no reason for it. There's not. And something's got to be done to figure out how to stop them. In a future video, I did do some polls on Instagram, and I might still do some more. So if you are not following me on Instagram, make sure to follow my Instagram, Killer Concepts Vlog. Down below, there's also a link to my more personal Instagram and my TikTok and my Twitter and my email if you want to send case suggestions or any information on mass murders or anything to help me with this venture. Please feel free to do so. But if you do want to keep updated until I'm finally able to get to the point where I have enough subscribers in order to post on like the community thing on here, you will want to follow my Killer Concepts vlog. That is it for today. This was not an easy story to talk about, and reading about the victims I think was the hardest part, but I think it's important to talk about these kind of things to try and prevent them from happening in the future. So yeah, that's it for today. We will come back to this topic. We'll probably go into some of the other recent shootings. If you have any case suggestions or, like I said, want to send me information, you can send them to me at killerconceptsvlog@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow me on social media. All my links are down below. All the sources are down below. And I hope you have a great evening. Just remember that the world's most dangerous minds hide in the most unlikely places. Stay safe.